Triple Witching Day, where options and futures contracts expire and get renewed all at once. These happen once a quarter, so Triple Witching and St. Patrick's Day all in one. Do me a favor and be careful out there. Our digital producer is Jarrett Dang. Our engineers are Jessen Dueller and Nick Esposito. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio. Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm. Malignant mesothelioma. Asbestos dust causes this cancer. Learn more from board-certified civil trial specialist Wayne Hogan at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's the biggest stories from the week. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, a look at the week's top stories with our Friday Roundtable. Early voting is underway across the city. Election Day is Tuesday. Have you cast your ballot? Duval County Public Schools is pushing back against the governor over book bans. And the city okayed $50 million in taxpayer funds for a new UF campus. Those stories ahead. We'll also interview City Council candidate Rockmon Johnson. And listen to local artists spotlighted on JME, our Jacksonville Music Experience. Keep listening. It's all ahead right after this news.
It's a minute after 9 o'clock. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Coram. A nonprofit group focused on government accountability has filed a lawsuit against the Florida Department of Education. As Kathy Carter reports, the group says requests for public records concerning state education policies have not been released in violation of state law.
Tampa law firm Thomas & LaCicero filed the lawsuit in Leon County on behalf of American Oversight, which requested records involving communication between Department of Education officials, State Board of Education members, external groups, and the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis. Heather Sawyer, the group's executive director, says the requests seek information and communication about topics like critical race theory or the rejection of the AP African American Studies course.
Getting information to the public about exactly what's happening, who's involved, why they're doing this is really critical so that the public can take action now. It's not going to be good enough that they find out years from now when changes have taken effect and have reshaped the landscape for the kids of the schools there.
Sawyer says some of the records requests were submitted more than 10 months ago. I'm Kathy Carter in Sarasota.
Here in Northeast Florida, Dean Black, who is the chairman of the Duval Republican Party, has filed a bill that would make it illegal for Jacksonville or any other city to remove historical monuments or markers. And if they want to add a plaque contextualizing a monument, well, that would require the Florida Secretary of State's approval. The Senate version of the bill passed its first committee this week along party lines, with Democrats opposed, including Senator Tracy Davis of Jacksonville. In Jacksonville now, it's 59 degrees. We have a clear sky, a nice morning, sunshine this afternoon in the low 80s, rain coming on Saturday.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Opinions expressed on the Friday Media Roundtable are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
Early voting is underway across Duval County. Election Day is Tuesday. Duval schools are pushing back against the governor over his claims around banning books. And the city council has okayed $50 million in taxpayer money for a new UF campus. Some of the stories making headlines this week. Good Friday morning and happy St. Paddy's Day. We're live with you from Studio 2. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, all of the week's top stories with our Friday Roundtable. Only some of them are wearing their green. Dan Scanlon, the only one. And me. And it's 549-2937. Later, a conversation with council candidate Rockmon Johnson and our JME. Listening to local artists inside the Jacksonville music experience. But first, it's Friday, and here to round up all the week's news, we welcome Dan Scanlon, wearing the green for WJCT News. Good morning. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Good to see you. Aaron Gobra, Mike Mendenhall of the Jax Daily Record is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Melissa.
Regular contributor and former City Council President Jack Webb. Hey, Jack.
Good morning. And Melissa, I will say you can't see my socks.
You're Irish, aren't you?
Yeah, that's why my socks are green.
Okay, that counts. And Ben Becker of Action News Jax joining via Zoom. Hi, Ben. Good to see you.
Good morning, Melissa. I have hazel eyes. So does that count as green?
We'll accept that. We will accept that. And you can listen live on the radio to our fabulous foursome or watch them on our video stream right now on Facebook and YouTube. Let's begin with our top story. Voters have until this Sunday, March 19th, to vote early, or you can turn out on Election Day, this coming Tuesday, March 21st. The mayor's race is on the ballot, city council elections, but so far turnout has been abysmal, with just about 9% of eligible voters so far having cast their ballots. As we talk about election news, we want your calls. Who are you liking for the mayor of Jacksonville? What are your thoughts about these elections? It's 549-2937. Maybe you're sick of the negative ads and flyers cluttering up your mailbox. Let us know how you're feeling. 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax. Facebook always open. Dan Scanlon, let's begin with you. Just a few days left for people to cast their ballots, and many of these races will go to a runoff in May.
Now, especially since the mayor's race has 7 candidates to it, but we were discussing before we came on the air, it's amazing to some of us, to me, that the advertising on TV has dropped off, especially the angry advertising for the mayor's race. What I'm seeing more are other offices are putting their last commercials up because that's the amount of money they have to put in a spot, and I'm seeing that Leanna Cumber has gone to a very friendly, family-oriented ad with her children talking, which is very different than the acrimony that we had a few weeks ago between her and Mr. Davis. So that's the biggest change I'm seeing. It's a little quieter on the home front, and here we are 4 days away from that first and very crucial vote.
That's right. Early voting ends on the 19th. You can't vote Monday the 20th. Election Day is the 21st if you prefer to vote on the day. Ben Becker, Action News Jax, it's still really remarkable when you look at how much money has already been spent in this local mayor's race. Unprecedented amounts of money, mudslinging on the airwaves, and not much substantive discussion of where the candidates stand on the issues. Ben, let me make a shameless plug once again for our candidate profiles at jaxtoday.org, where you can learn a little bit about what the candidates want to do. Your thoughts?
Well, first off, I have to disagree a little bit with Dan. I've been anchoring all week, and the Cumber pack has been carpet bombing Daniel Davis all week long. Virtually every commercial break, there's a commercial about Dirty Daniel Davis. Every single commercial break. If I had a shot for every time that commercial ran, I wouldn't make it through half the show. It'd be like St. Patrick's Day every day.
Right.
So it's been coming hard. It's been coming heavy. They're using every piece
Ben,
of ammo they have left.
Ben, I want to ask you.
Gun.
Yeah, not to cut you off. Daniel Davis has filed a lawsuit over those ads, and he has sued not Leanna Cumber but local television stations like your own, saying that the ads make false and misleading claims. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, that's something the attorneys and the lawyers can handle. In the meantime, the ads have been running, and they'll play out whatever way it plays out. But the campaign has been tremendously angry, and not just coming from the Cumber side, coming from the Davis side. And these are the PACs, of course, so technically not from the campaigns, but you know how that rolls. But yeah, the amount of money spent has been enormous. I was going through some of the numbers yesterday, and I believe about 9 million has been raised so far in this campaign, and more than 7 million spent. And there was a stat that was out there, and I don't have the name of the company that put it out, but the Jacksonville mayoral race has had the second most amount of money spent than any other local race in the country.
Oh my gosh. That is
So
remarkable.
Let me say that one more time. The second most amount in the country. Okay?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and so I guess that should be a compliment, maybe, that the mayoral position is so popular that people want to spend so much money to get it. Maybe you should feel good about that, Melissa.
I've seen these mayors when they first get into office, and then I see them after they've been in office a while. I can just tell you right now, the happiest day of their lives is the night they get elected, and then it's all downhill from there. So I have to kind of question.
It's like buying a boat. The best 2 days is that you get it and the day you sell it.
Yes, you kind of question why they want it so much and why they're spending this much money. But Jack Webb, as a former public official, let me ask you about this, because on the one hand, we see Donna Deegan trying to stay above the fray with very positive messaging in her ads, trying to get a message of unity and positivity going. On the other, we see Daniel Davis and Leanna Cumber on the airwaves ripping each other up. They've spent ungodly amounts of money, as Ben pointed out. Al Ferraro doing much better than expected and had a very strong debate performance on television recently. He may siphon some votes away from both of these candidates. And is the dirtying up of Daniel Davis, metaphorically, with these ads, is that going to help Donna Deegan in a runoff if it gets to Davis and Deegan in the May runoff? Because Leanna Cumber has sought to define Daniel Davis very negatively to a group of voters that have never heard of him before. They don't know who this guy is. We all know who he is. Chamber president, former state lawmaker. The average voter doesn't know who he is.
I think it does help Donna Deegan in that well, first of all, as Ben said, Leanna's campaign has been carpet bombing Daniel Davis, and Dan Scanlon, who's in the business, wasn't even aware of that. That tells me they're not resonating. No one's talking about them. They're not effective. Right?
Maybe I'm not watching the right TV station.
Maybe right. That may be right. But again, the buzz, the negativity of the campaign is old news, so no one's talking about it now. Negative campaigning just drives down turnout.
Yeah.
Right. So to the extent that certain voters are not showing up because of the negative campaigning, Donna just keeps throwing fish into her, on the boat. Catch them, land them, get them in, get them to vote. So, yeah, I think it could help her.
It could. Now, on the other hand, if it does go to a May runoff between Davis and Deegan, Davis is sitting on a massive war chest, and we can certainly expect his campaign consultants who have, let me put it kindly, interesting reputations in this community, are going to put Donna Deegan through the meat grinder on television and in mailers and in other kinds of messaging. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and as it has been fascinating as we've been talking about to watch the styles of these candidates as things have gone through, and it'll be interesting to see how Donna Deegan responds to that. Will she continue to stay above the fray, continue to put the positive messaging out, or will she be forced to have some more critical advertising about Daniel Davis should he be in the runoff? And here it's also been interesting to see as far as media access as well. A lot, like most of these candidates, majority of them have been very accessible to folks like ourselves, with the exception of one, and that's been Daniel Davis. I mean, he's has not responded to most candidate Q&As or surveys.
Skipped most
forums, and then when he was on the most highly publicized one, the News for Jack's debate, a lot of analysts felt like his performance was uncharacteristically stale for him. I heard that characterization.
And that Ferraro really outshone him.
Yeah, and I think that when you're talking about a packed Republican conservative field, they're fighting amongst votes amongst about three primary Republicans. It's going to be interesting to see how that final vote total shakes out. Will Al Ferraro siphon off more votes than what the Davis campaign initially expected. How will Leanna Cumber's percent, or I think she had she had the higher single digits in the UNF poll that came out. Will she maintain that and keep those votes away from Davis? That it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
549-2937. Philip on the west side. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning. I have been traveling around the city and in multiple locations where the early voting is taking place. The political signs that are up are on the rights of way, which is against the law, and I don't understand how people that are running for positions to make the laws are indeed breaking the laws.
You live in Florida, Philip, and you don't understand that? Just kidding, Philip. But you're right. Technically, it is against the law. There's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And when it comes to campaign signs, and by the way, stealing them and doing other things campaigns and candidates shouldn't do, there's a long and honored, or should we say dishonorable, tradition in Duval of basically ignoring the regulations. Dan Scanlon.
Well, two quick notes here. Number one, Cumber has a brand new elections campaign team, so I think you're seeing the softer ad coming as a result of that. That said, every time I open up a news story on my web, there is the Leanna Cumber attacking Dan Davis ad in 2, 3, 4, 5 positions on whatever thing I'm looking at. So I'm seeing those attack ads online. Sorry, Ben, maybe I'm just not watching Action News at 6 o'clock versus 10 o'clock and seeing the ads.
Well, let me just say, everyone should watch Ben because he's great at what he does. And we appreciate him appearing on this program. But, Ben, let me give fair voice to all of the candidates. It's actually 7 candidates running. And Audrey Gibson, former state senator on the Democratic side, is polling decently well as well. We mentioned Ferraro, Davis, Cumber. There's another Republican, Frank Kiesler, perennial MPA candidate Omega Allen in there again. But, if it weren't for some of these ancillary candidates, according to the polling anyway, Deegan potentially could have won outright in March. She is far and away the favorite right now. She won't most likely, though, because there are so many candidates in the field.
Yeah, the polling, I believe, from UNF had her at 37%. Audrey's about 10, and I think Ferraro's also about 9 or 10. So, yeah, you can make the case that if Audrey Gibson wasn't in the field, that she could get the 50.
Right.
Now, that being said, there's
and not to cut you off again, I was just going to say there's rumblings that Gibson was enticed to run, right, Ben, to prevent Donna Deegan from winning outright.
There's a conspiracy theory out there that she's in the field to keep the numbers down for Donna. Now, if you ask Audrey Gibson, she'll deny that, and I've talked to other people who deny that. But people will speculate as they will, and that number cuts into Donna's support.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Donna Deegan is hurt by Audrey Gibson in the field. Ferraro's going to run anyway. So whether Daniel Davis or Leanna Cumber or whatever else, Al Ferraro was planning to run, and Ferraro has a strong base of support as the most conservative member of city council. Although if you watch the ads on TV, you would think he's a liberal, which is ironic because he's called a liberal in these ads that are from the Davis side, and all he did was vote for Lenny Curry budgets.
Yeah.
So chew on that for a second.
Yeah, I, when you see those ads, anyone who knows these politicians and sees them being called liberal, it's almost comical. But obviously, Jack, the people making these ads think that will resonate with a slice of voters.
It's the L word. I tell you, when I was on council, I'm like, hey, listen, we're in Jacksonville, Florida. There hasn't been a true liberal in Jacksonville in the last 30 years, okay? So come on, let's move on. With regards to where this goes, though, I think you're right. If Audrey Gibson was not in, Donna would have a pretty good shot at getting 50% plus 1 vote. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the runoff, assuming that it is Donna versus Daniel, where Leanna Cumber votes go. I would not say they're a lock for Daniel. I think Donna's got a pretty good shot of picking up a lot of those women.
I think that's fair to say, and I think there will be at least a few prominent Republican women in this community that will support Donna Deegan publicly. That said, there may be some African American Democrats that come out in support of Daniel Davis. So, Mike Mendenhall, as we talk about all the intrigue, let's not lose sight of the fact that whoever is elected will have a lot of challenges. This city has a lot of problems.
No doubt. I mean, we still have a backlog of infrastructure needs. This city council started funding some of the septic tank remediation that's been promised for decades in some of our more challenged neighborhoods, and so that's going to be big on their plate. We have the stadium. The Jaguars are already in early stage talks with the city to possibly renovate the stadium, which could end up costing the city somewhere around $500 million possibly or more, depending upon what the final design and price tag is. So just those two issues alone are going to mean big spending coming down the pipeline for the city, and this new mayor is going to have to decide, how are we going to pay for this? How am I going to craft my budget? Are we going to try to raise taxes? Are we going to try to pay for it through other means? And one more point on the politics too. As we move into the runoff race, I'm very curious to see what kind of outside groups start to become more public in this race. Ben was mentioning this is the second highest or most costly race in the country from a local perspective. Donna Deegan is polling incredibly well. Does she start to get financial support from the national party, from the statewide Democratic Party as a seat that could possibly be flipped? Does Governor Ron DeSantis, go all in on the Republican?
Does he endorse?
Does he endorse? Yeah. Does he endorse, or does he? I mean, and how is his endorsement? Is it an endorsement like simply, running ads or flyers, or does he get on the ground in Jacksonville campaigning side by side? Because that could really make a difference in this.
I think that's right. It's speaking of the governor. Let's talk about his comments regarding local schools, and it's 5492937 to join us. Did you see this? Duval County Public Schools is pushing back against the governor's claim that the district extended its book review process to make him look bad. Last week, the governor held a press conference where he said news outlets were perpetuating what he called a hoax, that the state was banning books from local libraries and classrooms. He singled out Duval, where books about Roberto Clemente and Hank Aaron were temporarily removed.
There have been 23 districts that have had violations, mostly involving pornographic material. But the Department of Education went to, I think it was Duval County, said, hey, wait a minute. You have a beef with Hank Aaron or Roberto Clemente. Where are you getting this? Why can't we learn about that? Where in our law does it say? And of course, they didn't have an answer. I said, no. We're not taking Hank Aaron out. We're not taking Roberto Clemente out. And, look. If our kids only learned about Roberto Clemente and Hank Aaron, I think they'd probably do okay if you just studied their lives. So that's a hoax. That's a false narrative that they're trying to do. And when you were in, I know Duval County, what they did was they kind of waited to even indulge and follow the law for a long time. And so you ended up with a situation where kind of at the end of the period when they said, oh, we got to take all these books and review and all this stuff. And that wasn't necessary the way they did it. They chose to do it, I think, to try to get more maximum impact in terms of what we've been able to accomplish.
The Duval schools put out a statement the other day saying, no, that's not true. They say they've simply been trying to comply with the state law, reviewing books in media centers and directing teachers to cover unapproved books in response to guidance from the State Board of Education. They have approved about 10,000 of 1.5 million books so far. They say they're doing this to make sure they don't run afoul of state law. By the way, Florida's largest teachers union filed a lawsuit Thursday against the State Department of Education over all of this. 5492937. What about this? The Duval County Public Schools issued a pretty strongly worded statement, Dan, saying, no, the governor is not accurate in saying that we were complying with these laws in order to make him look bad.
Any business who is faced with action like this is going to possibly go to the full extent, remove every book and carefully review them. So we have images sent to you, to me, to many reporters showing empty bookshelves or covered bookshelves. That's just a cautionary reaction by the school district. Let's clear the books, cover the books, and then do the best job we can to get them back. That's not a hoax. That's just the way that Duval County is doing it. Dr. Green trying to make sure that our teachers do not fall afoul of any of the possible punishment, which could be a crime or decertification as a teacher. That's all it is, I think. They're being extra careful in Duval County.
Yeah, not every district has gone as far as Duval Bend. At the same time, you know, the images of these empty shelves in Duval schools have gone viral around the world, and they frankly, they have made the governor's office look bad.
You know, it's a serious issue, but I have to chuckle, Melissa. Ha ha ha. I think Duval they know what they're doing here. They're going by the letter of the law. They're being obstinate about it. They do want to make the governor look bad, and they do want to follow the letter of the law. So let's make no mistake about it. They know what they're doing here. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get the chops busted. But all that being said, make no mistake about it. You know, they want to play games with the governor and the state. Keep this in mind. It was about a week ago, it came out that the state of Texas took over the school district in Houston.
Yeah,
over
the whole
issues
school
and
district.
problems there.
Yeah.
So, that hasn't happened in Florida yet. But, if Duval wants to play games with Tallahassee, I wouldn't put it past anybody to say, all right, well, then we're going to fire back with, at you in a lot harder way, and you're coming back at us.
It has been remarkable, Jack, to see the way Governor DeSantis has really zeroed in on not just K through 12 education, but also higher education with the legislation he and the legislators in Tallahassee are pushing through the process. It's been highly controversial. He claims a mandate to do this. He did handily win re-election. Critics say he's using education as a stepping stone to try to get to the White House, messing around with Florida schools as part of an overall ambition to run for the presidency.
I think that's right. You see what he's done down with the new college in Southwest Florida with regards to the replacement of the entire board and named a new president. I think it was Carker, and he put in there. And I think it's not just education. I think it's social issues as well. That's why we become ground zero for these culture wars here in the state of Florida. And that's rather unfortunate. But there was an interesting article in Politico just the other day about that, saying, hey, listen, Governor DeSantis, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, because he's got the supermajority in the state legislature. So just supporting these things on the stump that don't necessarily get through the legislature, that's probably good for him politically. But supporting these things on a stump that do get passed by the legislature may not resonate around the rest of the country, both with more moderate Republicans and in a general election as well.
Yeah, Mike Mendenhall, these issues play very well with the governor's base, maybe not so well in front of a general election audience coast to coast, if he does become the Republican nominee for president.
No, that's absolutely true. And I mean, he's stated in several speeches that he wants Florida to be the template for what he would do nationwide. I mean, and that he seems to believe that. And if you look at several other GOP led state legislatures around the country are doing very similar things, whether it's expanding school choice with vouchers or trying to ban DEI initiatives within public universities, all of these kind of things, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, the Parental Rights and Education bill, like those very similar pieces of legislation are going through in states where there are either Republican majority or supermajorities in the legislature. And my home state of Iowa, if you look at their docket this year, it's almost a mirror image of what's happened in Florida when it comes to social issues the last two cycles, so last two session seasons. So it's very clear that they're, at least amongst the more hardline GOPers, that they're looking at what DeSantis is doing as a possible way forward nationally.
Ann on the South Side. Hi, Ann. Good morning.
Hi, Ann. I am so upset with this man. DeSantis, in my opinion, is a tyrant. He thinks he knows better than everyone else. He's gone up against free speech, access for media, business speech, Disney, for example, book access, LGBTQ, black students, black student history, school boards. I've got a list that goes on and on. He's gone against individual business owners. It just doesn't seem to end. The district attorney, it's ridiculous that he's gone after something like Disney, which has been doing a fine job for 50 years and made the state a lot of money. And just because they spoke up against his Don't Say Gay law, they're now in a different situation. He is a tyrant, and something needs to happen to stop him. I am so glad the teachers union has filed suit against him.
And thanks. Dan Scanlon, a UNF poll found that overwhelmingly Republicans in Florida prefer Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump to be the nominee for president next year. He has a strong base of support here. At the same time, that poll found that the Florida electorate overall strongly disapproves of all of the controversies that caller just mentioned, also disapproves of the legislature working to limit abortion in the state to 6 weeks of pregnancy, also disapproves of open carry legislation for guns in Florida. All of those issues are not where the majority of the voters are in this state.
And yet apparently many other states have many of those rules already in place, Texas being one of them. So there is some precedent that DeSantis is following where other states are going. He can point to that. But, here's a point. I saw this in the New York Post 2 weeks ago. Do you realize that the proposed budget for the state of Florida is more than the proposed budget, than the city of New York? That is a scary fact that we cost more than they do. Maybe I have that reversed. But regardless, that's a lot of money that we're proposing. And that woman just put a whole laundry list of stuff down that certain people don't like, but they're the minority. They speak out at the hearings before the committees, and it makes no difference.
Okay, folks, we need to make note of another big story from the week. It looks like a new University of Florida graduate school is coming to downtown. The city council approved this Tuesday night. Taxpayers will eventually be on the hook for $50 million. Critics say that's a lot to put down for a project we still don't know much about. No word yet on where the new UF graduate campus will even be sited. We know only that it will be somewhere downtown. Ben Becker, Al Ferraro on the city council, the only no vote to okay these taxpayer funds.
Well, we do kind of know where it could be if they would share the information. I got a PowerPoint presentation about 2 weeks ago, and I did a story about it. Shows, and this is the proposed location, it would take up half the parking spots at FSCJ, some JEA property right next to it, and also the Mary L. Singleton Senior Center. Those would be the proposed spots for it. Now, of course, it would displace seniors as well. That's a whole different story.
Not to mention my polling place. Just FYI.
Right, FYI. So,
yeah, go ahead.
We're looking at about 18 acres there in that the area, 15 to 18 acres. So, but they haven't shared that publicly. That's been kind of, behind closed doors. For whatever reason, they don't want to come out with it. Now they're saying it's up to UF where they want to be. I know there's some stuff floating out there about the fairgrounds or something like that. That would get the Jags involved. We'll have to see. But yeah, there's a lot of questions here. And, the point has been made that we, the taxpayers, are putting $50 million towards this thing over 3 years, and there's not a lot of details. But yet, when the Duval County School District wanted money for projects with a new school tax a few years ago, the city wanted every single detail and then some of how that money was going to be used. So I find the dichotomy interesting.
Yeah. So that is certainly true. Jack Webb, the selling point, though, for this whole initiative is that bringing fintech graduate level programs to town is a good economic development move. What are your thoughts about how the council voted on this?
Well, it certainly is. It could be, as Mike and I were talking before, it could be a game changer for the city of Jacksonville. And in the long term, $50 million is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, people. It's a lot of money. I get it. But if it's a down payment on a transformative project for the downtown area, I mean, it's something that we need to seriously consider. To Ben's point, though, there's a lack of transparency here. You need to build consensus on projects. Now, I understand at times there's a need for confidentiality. You don't want to let the cat out of the bag. You don't want to upset the deal and make it go away and scare it away. But I will say this. I mean, it's easy to say no all the time. Sometimes it's harder to push the green button when you know your butt's on the line politically. So,
as you learned, you went through it.
oh yeah.
Mike Mendenhall.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that if you look at any city that has a major, a major grad or college institution in their city center, I think there's definitely economic benefit. You're gonna have developers, builders who are going to need to build this facility. Possibly housing as well. I mean, and which could bring more people, more commerce. That being said, if you look at the city council and they voted with just one no vote on this. I've seen other development deals that actually have more detail available that have failed in front of city council. You look at this is a much more costly would have been a much more costly project for the city. But Lot J, Shad Khan's proposed entertainment center that was supposed to go by the stadium. The sticking point was that the return on investment was shaky, as well as the developer that was working with the Jaguars refused to give what their financial gap was to justify the need for the large incentive. In this situation, we don't have renderings, we don't have a site. We had some enthusiastic speeches by UF and by the mayor's office, and it passed overwhelmingly. So I mean, and granted, these are two different uses. I mean, for sure, and I think you could argue that UF has a good reputation that could bring something, to Jacksonville, but. A lot of development deals come before the city council with much more information and get a little more scrutiny.
More scrutiny. We will be speaking to a city council candidate in a moment, which means we're going to shorten this discussion just a little bit, but we still have time to go around the horn and talk about stories you might have missed from the week. Yes, it's our lightning round. Beginning with Dan Scanlon. Dan.
Well, the big announcement yesterday by the state attorney was the arrest of a second suspect in the Bradigan murder of 13 months ago, and it turns out to be the landlord of the first suspect who was arrested, who then pleaded guilty yesterday of actually firing the gun that killed Mr. Bradigan. But there's more to come, according to prosecutors.
Thanks for that. Ben Becker.
I'm still trying to figure out what the Jags are going to do in NFL free agency, Melissa. This has been top of mind for me. I'm a little concerned.
Jack Webb.
Nothing's happening. There's losing people. They're not adding people, Melissa. This could be an issue.
That's not good. Jack Webb.
We talked about removal of individuals from office. The state attorney who was removed by Governor DeSantis appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals because the case was dismissed at the trial court level, at the district court level. So, but the 11th Circuit last week or earlier this week maybe expedited oral argument on that. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see what develops. I think it's oral arguments coming up in like 30 days on that. So that's something to follow.
Yeah, could they rule in favor of Mr. Warren, the fired Tampa area prosecutor?
Could be in light of what they ruled at the district court level. Yeah, it's very possible.
Mike Mendenhall.
Well, might be upset about the free agency situation with the Jaguars, but there is something happening on the development side. They actually have filed a permit to build a foundation for their Four Seasons hotel.
I saw that.
This thing might actually start to come out of the ground.
But has the Four Seasons come out yet and confirmed that, yes, in fact, it will be a Four Seasons?
And that is a great point. There has been no official confirmation from Four Seasons corporate.
Or could it be a Days Inn? I'm just kidding. Yeah. I know it won't be, but...
Yeah, we'll leave the line on.
I can't top that.
But yes, they did file a permit for that luxury hotel, so that's happening as well. Also, join us today at noon for the Florida Roundup. We'll look at new rules that limit public protests at the state capitol and a conversation with State Senate President Kathleen Passidomo on what's going on with your lawmakers in Tallahassee this spring. And I want to thank all four of you gentlemen, Dan Scanlon, Ben Becker, Jack Webb, and Mike Mendenhall. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Top of the morning to you.
Thanks, Melissa.
In a moment, Rockmon Johnson joins us, candidate for City Council District 14. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, and early voting continues today and tomorrow. We're continuing our profiles of local candidates on the ballot as we welcome Rockmon Johnson, candidate for Jacksonville City Council, District 14. Good morning.
Good morning. So good to be here with you, Melissa.
Good to see you. We should disclose you actually used to work here a long time ago at WJCT, which I did not know.
I did. I've been involved from, since the 80s when Lydia Stewart was here in a program called Young Voices. And I have done many, many things with WJCT on the volunteer and on the work side.
You're a broadcast journalist. And what prompted your move into office? You also have held another office.
I held office, if you can imagine it, 25 years ago.
Oh my gosh!
I ran when I was a student at Edward Waters, and I was an associate producer at Channel 4, and I was going to school to be a journalist, and I kept seeing things that I wanted to change in the community. So no one was stepping up to the plate, and I ran, and it opened the door for other young people to get involved. I was in my early 20s when I ran, and like I said, I was a student. And then after me, Reggie Fullwood ran for city council, and other young people came and got involved.
You were on Soil and Water?
I was on Soil
Conservation?
and Water. I was.
Wow.
I was.
So what prompted you to jump back in and run for office? So this is District 14, which is a West Side district.
Yes, it includes Argyle and Chimney Lakes and Oakleaf Plantation, this complete 103rd Street, all the West Side. Let me tell you, I'm a professor now at Edward Waters University, and I left one morning, and my house was in District 10. By the time I got home, it had magically been transported to District 14. And I looked at the district. It's so much more diverse than it's ever been. It's a lot browner. And looking at the new district lines, I wanted to make sure that we had representation that made sense. And so for me, I reflected the district. I'm a storyteller, which is what I've spent my life doing. And I felt that I could bring these stories bring voice to certain stories. And most importantly, I started getting calls. There was a social media campaign, hashtag Run Rockmon Run. I started getting calls from Ben Frazier and the NAACP and other people saying, hey, it's an opportunity for this district to be represented by someone who actually looks like the district. Yeah.
So what would you do for the district, and what do you think are the biggest priorities the new council should undertake?
Well, number one, I've talked to people throughout the district. I didn't want to just come into the race and say these are my priorities, but I wanted to talk to people in the district. And number one is infrastructure. There's a lot of issues when it comes to road widening and ditches and just amenities, sidewalks, things like that. And so that's something that is a very important part for District 14. Additionally, public transportation, ensuring that the public opportunities for the transportation that runs the city from that side to connect it to other sides is there. We want to connect that and make sure it's safe and accessible. Also, public safety is number one. People just want to feel safe in their homes and communities, which means we need more police. And last but not least, economic development. And I know that's a kind of a cliche term, but we want to make sure that people who live on the west side don't have to go to Mandarin or South Point or somewhere else to go to work. We want to have economically viable businesses that pay a living wage in the community.
Let's start with infrastructure.
Sure.
How would you pay for all of the infrastructure improvements we need?
Well, there are dollars that are already appropriated, but the problem right now is they haven't been pushed forward, right? And so I believe as a council member that I would not only come up with innovative ideas to use the dollars that are already there, but to find other ways. I just sat on the La Villa Redevelopment Project task force through the Downtown Development Investment Authority. And one of the things we looked at is the fact, how can we use DOT dollars, right, to put it with what we're already doing with DIA to showcase La Villa? Well, we can do that in other sides of town as well. There's state projects, there are DOT projects on the federal level, but putting those things together. And unfortunately, we have silos, people over in this side and that side, and not talking and not using the money that's already allocated.
Public safety. Jacksonville has been the murder capital of Florida off and on for decades.
Yeah.
We keep throwing more money at the problem. It's not really helping, although there was an effort some years ago to get at the prevention and intervention aspects of crime rather than the enforcement with the Jacksonville Journey.
Yes.
That was starting to make a dent, and then it got defunded. So how would simply hiring more police solve the problem? Because that hasn't solved the problem before.
Well, it's not a panacea, and there will be no panacea. It's going to be this and that, not specifically this, right? And I believe that in those spaces, we do need to put more dollars. According to the Department of Justice, Jacksonville has about 1.6 police officers per 1,000 people, and we really need to have about 2.6 to 2.9 officers per 1,000 people. So we do need more officers so that we can do community policing, but we also need to have programs like the Jacksonville Journey. Right now, you can't do community policing because you have officers who are running around trying to get to the next call, so they don't have time to get out of their cruisers and stop and interact with the community. And I think having that, especially in light of all the other issues that comes with policing and people and deaths by cop and the things we're finding out, I think it's important for us to have that community aspect, but it only happens when we have the manpower and the programs working in tandem.
You're running as a Democrat for District 14. There's a Republican supermajority on the city council, although a number of Democrats are running to try to change the political balance on that body somewhat. How would you work if you were elected, as you would be in the minority? How would you get some of your priorities through?
One word: relationships. I've spent the entirety of my career as a journalist and now as an academic building relationships, whether it be with people to tell me their stories, whether it be with students. I've sat on boards and commissions throughout my life and throughout my career, but I do have relationships with some of the members of council, and though we may not agree with how to get there because we have different party affiliations, at the end of the day, potholes and streetlights do not have a party affiliation. And so I don't believe that a Democrat or a Republican on council is going to determine the issue, but it's about, can I sit down and have a coffee with you? Can we talk it through? What do we need to do to get to the solution? And it's all about solutions. And I believe that I'm a fun person to hang out with, and I think my council members would see that, and we can get a lot of stuff done.
I've been asked by a lot of listeners to put this to every candidate who comes through here. If the prospect of selling JEA comes up again, which some fear it might, what would you do?
Absolutely no. This is our community utility. I know people who work there. I understand the needs of having a utility that's owned by our city. And more importantly, this is something they're not making more of. It's kind of like land. They're not making more land. They're not making other public utilities. So for the sale of JEA, even without hearing it, I don't see the need of selling it or even entertaining that idea.
How important do you think it is that trust is restored in our local council? The JEA affair and other controversies have eroded trust in this body.
It's absolutely essential. One of the things I hope to do is, especially since I teach it and we talk about Web 3.0 and cyberspace and using that, I want to be able to use technology to consistently bring City Hall to people. And definitely people in District 14, but even people in Jacksonville. We need to use technology, which we learned during COVID that we can do, and create opportunities to connect us rather than divide us. So it's important for accountability, transparency, and trust to always reach out and always solicit information, because that's going to help us. Just talking about it moves our relationships forward.
As a professor at an HBCU, what are your thoughts about the governor restricting or refusing the teaching of African American studies?
I think it is ludicrous. It does not gel with any kind of educational understanding. I had a conversation this morning with our state senator, Tracy Davis, and that was one of the things that she is fighting so hard in the legislature to make sure that doesn't happen. And of course, being a super minority in the legislature, it's hard, but we have got to have people who stand up, who are not just saying, I'm going to vote the party label because this is, or the party line because this is what the governor wants. We've got to have people who say that academically it makes no sense. Even the bill that was passed to have accreditation. I'm currently a PhD candidate at Jackson State University and have done extensive research. For them to say that accreditation should be changed to accrediting agencies every cycle doesn't make sense because it does not allow for a continuity of education. So I think the governor and the governor's office is completely wrong on this one. And what they should do is let the academics stick with the academicians.
Well, as I mentioned, early voting is underway today and tomorrow, or you can vote on Election Day. Wherever you are in Duval County, get out and vote. There's a special election going on up in Georgia, too, for our South Georgia listeners. Vote in that. And thank you for coming in. Rockmon Johnson, candidate for Jacksonville City Council, District 14 on the west side.
Thanks, Melissa.
Is it the best side?
It is the best side. Duval.
We'll be back in a minute as we take a listen.
On the next Fresh Air, our interview with Michelle Yeoh, She just won the Oscar for Best Actress for her performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. We'll also feature our interview with Adam Sandler. This Sunday, he'll receive the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, presented by the Kennedy Center. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
Make banking boring again.
And anybody who wants to take a lot of risk should not be in banking. Banking should be boring.
We'll have more on the fallout from the collapse of SVB and Silvergate, an oil drilling deal, and the latest on the Texas court case that could upend access to reproductive health care nationwide. Next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Time to listen to the JME, our Jacksonville Music Experience. They cover all the latest music news from artists around the world and right here in the 904. Local artists are in regular rotation on the Independent, 89.9 HD4. WJCT Arts and Culture Editor Matt Shaw is here to have us listen to 3 new local songs you can hear on the Independent and read about at jacksmusic.org. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Melissa.
Okay, what's exciting this month?
First up, I want to talk about Bobby Kidd. It's a popular indie folk group, has some new music out. There have been a few singles and a 7-inch release from this band since their 2018 album, Peach, which is very popular local underground release. But this is the first single from an upcoming full-length due out in early April. The song is called 10 Minutes Late. It's down-tempo, melancholy kind of track, some nice languid guitar sounds. Drums are used to great effect. Let's take a listen to 10 Minutes Late by Bobby Kidd.
I'm never on time for anything called up 95 just to try and say goodbye. But I was 10 minutes late. Would it have been better to see your face with this color?
I just can't get over how much local talent there is.
I know.
Musically, and you always find such great artists.
Yeah, and I should say Bobby Kidd's got the full length that track is on, comes out April 7th, and they're doing a album release party on April 15th at the Walrus in Murray Hill.
Check that out. That's Bobby Kidd, 10 Minutes Late. Okay, Rambler Kane's up next.
Yeah, I want to talk about a song called On Your Line. That's the latest from Jacksonville singer-songwriter Rambler Kane. There's an underground country and alt-country scene happening here in Jax with bands like Dean Winter and The Heat and Focus People, who's been around for a while. Rambler Kane is part of that kind of movement bubbling up under the surface. On Your Line is one of his more stompier tracks. It's no-nonsense country rock. The latest from Rambler Kane.
Too.
Yeah, he's, of the blue-collar working musician ilk. He's got a regular gig Monday nights, 8 to 10 p.m. at Casbah Cafe in Avondale. He's also playing, there's the Wolfstock Festival that's coming up at Canine Social. That's also on April 15th.
All right, last but not least, Lucy Lind.
Yes, I really, really love this youngster. Lucy Lind, a songwriter, he's a producer, and also as a performer, he's got it all working. He's been releasing some DIY singles since 2018, but has lately been performing a lot more and releasing new music like his latest Mistakes with the Bottle. It's a great showcase for his, he's got a knack for these kind of mature, melodic earworms and very chill production. I love the way he uses his voice. Lucy Lind will be part of our local showcase series at Blue Jay Listening Room in April. We're thrilled to have him. Here's a sample of his latest single, Mistakes with the Bottle.
Left you warm when it rained, and I know that you're so up in your flame, you're so done with the way your night goes. Didn't really wanna know, yeah, I just wanna be alone, but I can feel it on your shoulder. I'ma feel it when I'm older. Thought you wanna take a toast, but I just really wanna go. I met this man.
kind of mellow vibe. I like that too. Okay, so all of this is at jacksmusic.org. And by the way, the JME Showcase Series is returning to a very popular spot, the Blue Jay Listening Room.
Yeah, we love doing these showcase series. We did a couple in 2022. We did one at Blue Jay. We're returning to Blue Jay. It's a really intimate venue. And what I love about the place is like it encourages this deep kind of active listening. So we're really excited to put a local lineup together there. We've got Lucy Lind, who we just played, electronic pop artist Daddy, neo soul and R&B singer Ebonique, and singer-songwriter Corey Kilgannon. All those artists are in rotation on the independent 89.9 HD4. It's a great way. These showcase series are a great way to discover artists working in your own backyard and also support a great local venue.
And let's not forget, you'll be announcing more shows and presenting the Music Discovery Series on the radio and at jacksmusic.org. So people need to check it out.
Yeah, keep your eyes on jacksmusic.org/events. We're got a ton of shows to announce in the next couple weeks.
Thank you so much. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
We'll close with Lucy Lind. Take a listen and make sure to check out 89.9 HD4, The Independent, the only place in town where you can hear local artists showcased in regular rotation on the radio. You can stream them as well at jacksmusic.org or listen to all of our radio stations through the WJCT app. I'm Melissa Ross. Talk to you again today at noon on the Florida Roundup statewide. In the meantime, make it a great day.
Take a toast, but I just really wanna go. I met this man. He had that same bloody problem, mistakes with the bottles, goddamn. He played like he saw his God, but he couldn't be farther, goddamn. And I seen the way that she looked at his face. I feel your pain, I hope you change, I hope you find your way. I met this girl, she had a problem with drinking, she's constantly thinking her world, feels like it's small and it's sinking, but darling, I think that you're falling and sinking, you're falling and sinking, you're falling and sinking, you're falling, I think that
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North